The following is a Kingfisher Media production.
How much do we really know about strangers? Is it fair to assume that they're different from us, or should we be searching for things that we can relate to? We shouldn't look so hard at the things we don't understand or agree with. We should look at the things that make us think, this is what I like about you. Today's guest is Crystal Gregory. Aside from her name and the name of her company, I don't really know anything at all about her, which I think is awesome. So I'm not going to try butchering an introduction on somebody who's a total stranger to me. I'll let Crystal maybe tell you a little bit about herself, and then we can jump into the conversation. Crystal, welcome to the show.
Thank you for the warm welcome, AC. Great to connect with you. I'm Crystal. I have a coaching company called CEG Coaching, and I'm based outside of Cardiff in Wales. And as you can tell from my accent, I'm not Welsh, but I come from the States, and I've studied in Canada, and I've worked abroad as well.
You've been all over the place then.
Yeah, I guess I have.
No, it's the first thing that grabbed me when we said hello this morning was your accent or lack thereof, because you don't sound quite like you're from the British Isles. I mean, you mentioned that you're American, but you don't actually sound American either, nor do you sound Canadian, where you said you spent some time there. Do you notice that your accent isn't the accent maybe you grew up with?
I do. And actually, I saw my parents over Christmas recently, and we were saying the same thing, just because I've lived abroad for a long time. So I've worked, I guess my English has changed more than what I think. Yeah.
Are there any words when you hear yourself saying them, you're like, wow, holy crap, like that does not sound like me?
I think when I try to butcher the Welsh words of where I live, but I'm not very good at pronouncing Welsh because it's a beautiful language, but the pronunciation is really difficult.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar except with TV and movies, but is that or was that, I guess, a challenge for you when you first got to Wales?
I did try when I first came to Wales to learn Welsh, and it was one of the hardest things, hardest languages that I have tried to learn. I think just because it has a lot of, because it's Celtic in origin, so it just has the vowels and the combinations of things are a lot harder. So, but I do find myself that I've picked up a lot of Britishisms along the way. I guess if you can. Like I find myself using the word boot and some other stuff more often than what I think.
Yeah, fair enough. No, I lived overseas years ago, and I mean, I was quite young at the time. I was just barely 14 years old when our family moved to South America. One of the things I remember really being challenging was just not just trying to fit into a totally new environment, but also not knowing the language. It's really hard to break down some of those social barriers. Like, how did you address these things?
That's a great question. I guess at least in the UK, because we share a common language, but we're divided by it as well. I just connected with people because, at the same, as you mentioned in the introduction, people are the same, fundamentally the same. We have different values and different cultures and different ways of living, but underneath that, we're human. And so I guess it's more connecting with that human spirit and that human community, which is really beautiful, no matter where you are in the world.
So I know a lot of times people focus on the surprising differences when they find themselves in a new environment. Were there any surprising similarities to you?
Yeah, actually, I think for me, it was the values of democracy that we have, or I haven't lived in the States for a long time, so I'm not going to make any political comments, but just in terms of like the shared values of community and togetherness, and that comes from living in a democracy or social democracy. That really surprised me. And the other thing was also, oddly enough, a love of football in a lot of the communities where I've lived, with soccer, but also basketball. My town here just spent a lot of money redoing the park in town, and they put in basketball courts, which surprised me. So
that actually is surprising.
Yeah,
Now,
I
I
know.
noticed you use both the words football and soccer. When you say football, I'm assuming you're talking about real football, not American football.
Yeah, I'm talking about real football. So
Okay, good.
yeah,
We're on the same page then.
good stuff.
I don't know. I feel a lot of times when I have these conversations for this show, it's like first date questions almost. There's a little bit of awkwardness at the beginning.
Okay, no
I'm
worries.
hoping that awkwardness goes away. I just see this like smiling face sitting across from me, and I'm trying to avoid asking questions like, "Hey, what kind of music do you like?" But
Okay.
maybe I shouldn't. What kind of music do you like?
Oh, it depends on what mood I'm in.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. I actually recently I've been getting back into soul and country, um, and a little bit of punk. Well, not punk, but like the classic rock, that kind of thing. Just it depends what mood I'm in, I would say. But
Okay. Well, this is actually good information about you. So now I'm wondering, does the music drive the mood, or does the mood drive the music?
um, I don't know. I think it depends on the mood drives it. I guess probably the mood. It could be related, but I just have my get up and go songs and that I listen to that I just really want to go with, and then I have, um, when you're having a moment and you just want a really emotional, cathartic experience. So yeah,
Yeah, I guess sometimes if you're just riding that edge between okay and not okay, a song
mm-hmm.
can push you to whichever side of the fence you need to be on in the moment, right?
Yeah, it can totally. Um, I was just thinking back to my first experiences back in the UK, and um, yeah, and there are some words that do tend to get an American into trouble here. And I had more than one experience with that, so that was kind of funny when I moved here.
Okay, I won't put you on the spot because we do have an international audience. I don't want anybody
Yeah.
getting their knickers in a twist.
Okay. So I won't say any of those words, but that was another funny thing. And the other cool bit was eating haggis or trying it, and some other of the unique cultural things that come from the British Isles. So
How successful were you with the haggis?
I wasn't very successful, but my
Okay,
general
so
rule.
I've never tasted it. In concept, it seems like a food that's based on a dare. Like would the overall presentation and flavor tie into that observation?
Yes, unless you're a diehard Scot. Although I have Scottish friends, so I'm not going to say anything about that.
Fair enough. What of your I don't want to say your culture of birth per se, but what did you bring with you to the British experience? Is there anything that just like, okay, I'm adaptable, I'm bold, I'm fierce, I'm willing to like fit in however I can, but this is crystal and this part of me is not negotiable?
I would say it sounds really cheeky, but peanut butter.
Okay,
Really
how
superficial.
is that exactly?
It's so superficial, but lots of my British friends and family, they don't like peanut butter. Like it's just not something that is, it tends to be a very American, North American experience. And I grew up as a kid just having it all the time. And it's just something that I love. And I know it's really superficial, but it's one of those things that when you live outside of your home country for a long time, you miss certain home comforts. And for me, it's peanut
Yeah.
butter and ranch dressing. So
Okay, do you have to have your peanut butter that's your preferred brand and your ranch dressing brought in?
I do. And actually, my parents just brought me a whole tub of peanut butter in their suitcase when they came for Christmas, which
See,
is really
anybody
sad.
who's you know what though, I get it, because like anybody who's lived outside of their home country for enough time understands that the things that you think you're going to miss are not the things that you miss. It's the silly things. Like for you, it's peanut butter and ranch dressing. The ranch dressing thing I totally get, because we used to have friends and family mail us ranch dressing to South America as well. But for me, breakfast cereal was the other one, because even if you can find a similar brand, it
Mhm.
never tastes the same. It's just, I'm sorry, but there's certain countries that do certain things and nobody else should try.
Yeah. And the other one for me is chocolate. And I know the stereotype is that, British and European chocolate is a lot better. And it probably is because it has low sugar content. But I do miss a good Hershey's bar sometimes in American style chocolate chips. Yeah, which there's a couple of places that sell them close to where I live, but they're always a special treat.
Hershey's bars are a bit of a weird one. I never realized all of my years of being Canadian that American Hershey bars and Canadian Hershey bars are different things. Like They do not taste the same.
No, so, they don't.
Yeah, I don't think you're being like a snob or anything for liking what you like. Now, when I spent a bit of time in the UK, I discovered there were some candies and snacks that were just absolutely delightful. That I had a hard time saying goodbye to, even though I was only there for a couple of weeks. One of which is a little bit weird, and I don't know if you've developed a taste for it or not, which was Marmite.
Well, the saying with Marmite is you either love it or you hate it. And I have tried it, but I just can't quite.
It's like just not your thing.
No. My one friend recently suggested I try it with Marmite and cheese. And she put it in a sandwich and I tried it, but it just wasn't quite. Yeah, not quite my.
You got to have a good skiff on some Jacob's cream crackers.
Yeah, I do like Jacob's crackers. I also love some of the flavors of crisps, which are really unique. Like I think that's probably one of the special parts about the UK that I love. Just the unique potato chips or crisps.
So, how long have you been over there now?
I've been here for about 6 years now. So it's definitely.
Are you still learning new things about your new chosen home?
I am at points in time. I am. It's an incredibly beautiful culture, an incredibly beautiful place, but has a really quirky way of living in a modern way in an ancient land. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay, so I normally don't like to get too far into what people do for a living, but I think in your case, it really does tie into the personal experience. Now, I don't want to describe what you do wrong. I know that you're into coaching. Mm-hmm. You want to explain a little bit about what your particular brand of coaching looks like?
Sure. I launched my coaching business in December of 2020. And my brand, I thought that I would be coaching executives and leaders, and I ended up with small and medium-sized business owners. And my brand of coaching is helping them to build online businesses using a system that I've created that helps them to get very strategically clear in 5 key areas for business, and then to use those to set a roadmap and then to practice some implementation along the way. So I guess my brand of coaching is kind of half structure, half client-led, and it's pretty fun.
How much do you draw from your personal experiences when you were developing your coaching strategies?
Oh, incredibly much, actually. Most of my clients come from the States, and some from Canada, and some from Australia, and some from the UK. So I enjoy coaching on the internationally and globally, just because I think that's kind of where my experiences are. And also being a global nomad, that's really impacted my business because I'm able to spot patterns and able to build community across lots of different barriers. So that's been really powerful.
Yeah, so you're not speaking from a place of, I hate to say book learning.
No.
You obviously got some education, but it sounds like you've taken your own personal experience and actually quite effectively woven it into your coaching strategy, because you know what it's like being in a new place and unfamiliar surroundings, and to take those experiences and try to help people sort of over the hump, as it were, and help them to not just cope with the changes, but thrive in the midst of the changes. That's not a small thing. It's actually kind of a big deal.
I never thought of it that way. And I guess that's what makes my brand of business coaching so powerful, is because I've done a lot of change and I can help people to communicate that and strategize in a way that is powerful.
Okay, so I'm a little distracted by something I'm
Mhm.
seeing in the background. What is that tree on the wall behind you?
Oh, that is part of my family living room. So that is a family tree. And as lots of my family is from abroad, that reminds me of them. So,
That's nice. You sort of like
oh, thank you.
keep that little point of connection right
Yeah,
easily at hand.
yeah, totally.
So are you the first person in your family to sort of branch out following the tree theme here and move overseas?
Actually, I was. I had a great aunt, I think, who taught English in Turkey a long time ago in the 1950s or 60s, but that was it. So,
So what does the decision look like? I mean, I don't imagine you woke up one day and thought, I'm going to move to the UK. Or maybe you did. I don't know.
no, I didn't. I moved here for family, and then I ended up, I still have British family. And so, yeah, it was a longer term decision, and it's been fine. It's been good.
You are listening to What I Like About You. Please remember to like, follow, and share.
Okay, I don't want to dwell too much on this whole international thing, though. I find it fascinating just because it's like it's really, really low hanging fruit for me as far as identifying
Okay.
a common ground. But I'm going to switch gears abruptly here. What's something about you that people don't usually notice that you wish they would notice?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I wish that they would notice that I'm multilingual and I love, this is going to sound really silly, but I love cooking. And um, yeah, I'm actually quite introverted. So,
You're
but people,
introverted.
yeah.
Okay, so an introverted coach. This seems like an odd
Mhm.
disconnect of concepts.
Really?
Well, I mean, your entire business seems to be putting yourself out there and helping other people. How does
Yeah.
an introvert do this?
An introvert does it because she loves, well, I love connecting with people one on one and in small groups. And that's why I find coaching really powerful.
Okay, so it's more of like a controlled social exercise then.
Yeah. So I guess I love people, but I don't love like large groups of people or big parties, or I do sometimes, but just, I'd much rather spend a Friday night watching a movie with a couple people than going out to the club. I had been learning to cook scones recently on the
Okay.
whole path to, um, yeah, but, and that's something I really enjoy to cook. And I also love cooking Mexican food and some East African food that's called ugali, which is like made out of corn flour, but you need a very special flour for it. So it's kind of fun.
Well, in a place as international as the UK, I would imagine these strange ingredients must be like somewhat easy to find, though.
They are in the big cities. You can find them
Okay.
definitely.
Okay, so I've gone through the process of learning to make scones. I did that years
Mhm.
ago. Scones are a very, very simple thing on the surface. When you start trying to put these things together effectively, they don't always work out exactly the way you want them to. Do you find that this like is in any way like a metaphor for life for you?
That is really deep. Oh my gosh, I had no idea. Podcast would be like an awkward first date, but it's good. It's really good. So I would say on the scones, yeah, I guess you do have to get it right. Because, but sometimes if you don't get the batter, if you don't put in enough butter or milk or something, then it can kind of crumble around the edges. And that, I guess that's very true for life. You need to make sure that you have a really strong core and really strong foundation. So.
What's your foundation?
Um, I'd say it's definitely God. So,
Yeah.
and family. I'm super close to my family, even though we live far apart. So, yeah.
Okay, I've already got a reasonable idea, I think, of what your version of God looks like just based on where you studied. But I don't like to assume anything because God means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. When you say your foundation is God, who is your God? What is that all about?
Well, I would say I'm definitely a Christian.
Okay.
What flavor of Christian, I'm not sure anymore, but I'd say I'm definitely a follower of Jesus. And that is my foundation.
I like the way you put that, like which flavor of Christian. I mean, it's easy to get stuck up in like the denomination labels, but I find even within the same denominations, you could talk to like two people that sit beside each other in church every Sunday for 30 years, and they're two totally different types of followers of God or Jesus, or, you know, I've always found that a bit fascinating, like how much difference there is within the church. I mean, I'm no longer a Christian, but I was for the majority of my life. I still find conversations about God, what about which version of God people believe in and why, to be incredibly fascinating, because you learn a lot about a person based on the attributes of God that they're most drawn to. So, I mean, if God were like a person that was in the room here with us, what would be the personality trait that you take the most strength from? You know, what part of this relationship is the most meaningful with this friend God?
That's a really powerful question. For me, it's the togetherness aspect, the Emmanuel, of God with us. And I think that's what appeals to me so much about Jesus, is that he is human and divine, and that kind of, he's very approachable. And I have lots of new age friends who are into like manifesting and talking about miracles in the universe. And what really appeals to me about Jesus is the fact that he is personable, and he's friendly and knows us. So in German, they have the word kennen versus wissen for the word to know. And I really, I don't know, have you heard that distinction before?
My dad was German. I'm familiar, but why don't you explain for everybody who's listening?
Sure. Yeah. And so wissen is more thinking about like to know about someone, or to know, like we could maybe know about Abraham Lincoln, whereas kennen is to know someone very personally on a personal level. And I think oftentimes people think of God as somebody that we can know about, as someone who's really far away, and that we can't know personally, or conversely, who doesn't know us personally on a personal level. And that's what attracts me to Jesus, is that he does take the time to get to know us on that level. But as you said, I'm not sure which box of Christianity I fit into anymore, but yeah, that's kind of, yeah.
So you mentioned having new age friends. Do you find that your faith, I don't want to say like your religion, because religion just seems so limiting, but your faith stances, your general spirituality, does this help you connect more or less with these people with different backgrounds?
In a strange way, recently it's been more, actually. I'm not sure
Yeah.
if it's the coaching space online, if it, yeah, but it seems like that I've been connecting with people who are more spiritual, or they would class themselves as spiritual, in different walks of that. So it's been
Do any of
interesting.
these conversations kind of like enhance your own personal spirituality?
Some of them do, actually. Some of them do. So.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, you know, to hear that, because I mean, again, this might be because of the brand of Christianity I was raised with and the kind that I practiced when I was a believer, but it wasn't a style of faith that was really very forgiving of other perspectives. So this idea that you can talk to somebody who's got, on the surface at least, a wildly different spiritual background, and like take that to strengthen or enhance or beautify in some way your personal faith, I think that's really, really awesome.
Yeah, I think it's come from, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't want to cut you off.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I think it's just come from my interactions in the last decade with people from many different walks of life. And I know from Muslim friends, I've learned their commitment to prayer and their commitment to fasting, which are some spiritual practices that I don't do enough, I think. And from my New Age friends, I like how open they are to miracles and the miraculous and stuff like that happening today. Whereas I think a lot of Christians, we kind of get stuck in the world of the Bible and forget that things can happen today too.
Do you think people are too skeptical these days?
Um, I think so a little bit, but
Is there like, and maybe this is me asking somebody who sort of works in the dark arts of mental health in some way, helping people with coaching and whatnot. But do you think that too much skepticism kind of interferes with a person's ability to function productively?
oh, that's a loaded question. I don't. I think it's interesting. I was chatting to my sister about this recently, and she's a professor at a university, and she's very scientific, but also very artsy. And I think that it's really good to be really super productive, to kind of have a bit of both, to have a bit of faith and a bit of magic, and a belief in faith or a belief in something outside of yourself. Because I think too much skepticism can really destroy your soul, because it's really hard to it's hard to believe. I think there's something in us that desires to believe in a wider purpose.
So how do you balance the magical with the scientific?
That's a good question. I guess I live a very modern life and function that way, but also leave room open for God as well, to come in.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, it's I find everything about this conversation so fascinating. I feel like I talk to you like all day long because
okay, that's fine.
I keep bumping up against these things where I feel like you and I are so different, but at the same time, it's like when you start explaining yourself, I realize that we like these big differences, they're not that big. I don't even know if they're differences, because I tend to give myself a hard time a lot of the time because I feel like maybe I am too skeptical. Maybe I'm a little bit too unreceptive to the magic in life because of the skepticism. And I do try to force myself to be a little bit more, I don't want to say childish, like in an insulting or condescending way, but just like that innocent acceptance of things that don't make sense. That's the part of childish that I'm trying to lean more towards. I feel like people like you really inspire me to embrace this childishness, but like in a grown-up way. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah, 100%. I was thinking about this. I actually trained in applied linguistics at Trinity Western to help cultures develop alphabets and stuff like that. And when you learn about lots of different cultures and do some anthropology and things, you realize that throughout human history, we've always had this desire for something outside of ourselves, whether you call it God, whether you call it connecting with the universe. And I think that's where things like art and music and stuff like that come from, because if you think about it, we even made human art in the worst human condition. And in the concentration camps, there was an orchestra and art that happened. And so I think it's something within us that even if you don't believe in God, to embrace that side of our humanity is really healthy. But again, you need to kind of balance that with your normal life and what you need to get done as well. So.
No, it's actually kind of like a fascinating take that you just had when you mentioned art and music. I mean, there is so much, like, especially when you get into to music, there's so much math, which is just hard, unavoidable science that's wrapped up in music. But at the same time, it really is quite a magical thing that it's difficult to pin down what exactly the heart of it is. You can't boil this down to a mathematical equation, but you can't take the math out of it either. I think that's a perfect example of, I think, the kind of balance that you and I are both striving towards from seemingly different ends of the spectrum. You really gave me something to think about. I don't know why this one thing is like sticking out so much, but this is going to stick with me for a couple of weeks probably.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and I guess that is what I enjoy about coaching, is I find it as both an art and a science. And especially in business growth, you're looking at the systems and the KPIs and stuff like that, but you're also looking at the art of the business and the purpose and the passion of the organization. And I think that's probably why I'm driven or drawn to purpose-driven clients as well. So they're businesses, but they also have some kind of wider message to share with the world.
Thank you for listening to What I Like About You. Please remember to like, follow, and share.
Okay, so we're coming towards the end of our time here together, and I do want to give you a bit of time to sort of give your proper pitch for your coaching business.
Okay.
But what I like to do before we get to that point in the conversation is, like the title of the show suggests, what I like about you. I want to spend a little bit of time just dwelling on what it is that I do like about you, because I did come into this conversation with a couple of preconceptions, not a lot, because I knew next to nothing about you. But I find every single one of these conversations I have, my preconceptions end up just getting like thrown right out the window. I don't even know why I bother having these stupid preconceptions.
Yeah.
Because I'm just wrong every single time. I just wanted to double check like what your last name was. I mean, that's how this whole thing started. I tried to know as little as possible. So I had your email address. I Googled that. I found the bio page for your website, and it's like, okay, it's Crystal Gregory. I wanted to make sure that I knew at least that much in case it came up. I don't want to be totally uninformed.
Mm-hmm.
While I was looking at your website, I saw that you were educated at Trinity Western University. And like I said before, like I used to be a Christian, I'm not anymore. A lot of the time I do find like there's a tendency for me to want to like start debating with people who are Christian and like really turn the whole faith thing into a point of conflict, which is silly. And I don't think I'm arguing with the people so much as I'm arguing with my past self.
Mm-hmm.
And I was expecting on some level that because you were educated in a like quote unquote Christian university, that there might have been like sort of something about you that I just really wouldn't like. But I found that one part of you that I expected to find the most offensive ended up being like one of the most endearing things about you, because your approach to faith is just, I don't want to minimize it by saying it's casual, but it's natural. It's a beautiful thing to observe. And I don't feel like you're weaponizing your faith. I feel like you're unashamed of it. It's a source of strength for you. But you don't expect me to like share that source of strength. You're not going to beat me over the head with it. And I think that's admirable. And it just your general perspective. I mean, you're so nice. I don't know why I wasn't expecting you to be so nice.
Oh,
but
okay.
It's not just that I got these things that I really like about you. I feel like I like you. Is that okay to say out loud?
Sure. I guess. Thank you. I wasn't really sure what to expect in this conversation. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, so your company is called CEG Coaching?
Yep, it is.
Okay, if somebody wants to find you, if they want to know what you're all about, like what can you tell us about CEG Coaching?
Sure. It launched in December of 2020, and I launched with my friend's old iPhone and a broken laptop. And then I got one client, which led to more than 15 in a year. And it was an amazing journey, really, really cool. And I ended up working with 15 businesses to help them to grow, using really boring things, but fun things like SOPs and processes and workflows and stuff to get to the next level, but also having the right structure in place. And so people can find me at cegcoaching.com, and my other website is profitablepurposes.com. So.
Okay, and of course, we'll make sure that I include links in this week's show notes. Crystal Gregory, thank you so much for spending a bit of time with me today. And I hope anybody who's listened to this conversation will learn that it's okay to ask questions, even if the questions don't seem very well formed sometimes. It's okay to be awkward with each other, because that's how we get to know each other.
Yep, even across an ocean. And
exactly.
Yeah, thank you so much for the time as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Crystal.